The fourth Zelda game, Link's Awakening, also known as the Island of Dreams in Japanese, was released in June of 1993. Originally intended as a Game Boy port of A Link to the Past, the project ended up taking on a life of its own and becoming its own title, though the game's origins as a version of Link to the Past can still be picked up from the bosses, dungeons, map designs, and aspects of the story. As previously mentioned, it was originally made for Game Boy, but was later remade for the Game Boy Color, and more importantly, that remake was remade for Nintendo Switch. This isn't the first time, and will be far from the last time that we deal with a remake of a remake on this channel. The Switch version will be the most canon version discussed in this video. If you enjoy this Zelda content and want to see more, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I also do Mario, Sonic, Kirby, and plenty of other series, so even if Zelda isn't your usual place, I'm sure you'll find something to enjoy here. The game opens with Link braving a storm on a small boat. The original manual gives us some background, describing how, after Ganon was killed in A Link to the Past, Hyrule returned to being a land of peace. However, the people feared Ganon's return, and Link knew that a day would come when Hyrule would once again need a hero. So, deciding to make the most of this peace, Link went traveling, in search of wisdom and enlightenment to better aid him in protecting his homeland. But that journey is over now, and the hero of legend is on a boat returning to Hyrule, stronger than ever. However, he gets caught in a nasty storm. Link tries to fight it, attempting to keep control of the boat, but ends up being struck by lightning, falling overboard, and waking up on an island to the south of Hyrule.
What a relief! I thought you'd never wake up. You were tossing and turning. What? Zelda? No, my name's Marin.
But it turns out that, instead, she is Marin, a citizen of Mabe Village on Koholint Island who bears a mysterious resemblance to the princess. After finding the hero washed up on the shore, she and her father Terran took him in while he healed from his wounds and awoke from his slumber. The people of the village seem kinda welcoming, but something feels off about them. The children of the town seem to be speaking of otherworldly things they shouldn't know, like the button layouts of the controller. This usually isn't something I would call out since, yeah, this is a video game. Sometimes the fourth wall needs to be broken for tutorials. However, in this case, the game lampshades this abnormality itself, with the children talking about how they really shouldn't know of such things. Link goes down to the beach in order to retrieve his sword. Both the sword and the shield are stated to have Link's name on them and look identical to the basic sword and shield from A Link to the Past, so they're meant to be the same items. While on the beach, Link is greeted by a friendly owl who explains that since his arrival, monsters began to appear on the island and have been acting violently. The owl thinks this is because a hero has arrived on the island in order to awaken a mysterious deity-like figure known as the Windfish, who is neither wind nor fish, but who has, since time immemorial, slept within the egg atop Mount Tamarack. The owl says that Link will not be able to leave Koholint until he has awakened the Windfish, and suggests he track down the 8 instruments of the Sirens. This hunt for the instruments of the Sirens takes up the game's entire playtime. Over the course of his adventure, Link meets numerous interesting characters that have ties to other Nintendo franchises. For one, Terran, Marin's father, looks very similar to Mario, but the comparisons don't end there. Terran is shown to be a mushroom forager, and the mushrooms he collects look very familiar. He's also turned into a Tanuki at one point, drawing comparisons to the Tanuki suit from Super Mario Bros. 3. A character we meet later in the game, known as the Henhouse Keeper, also bears a striking resemblance to Luigi. There are also a number of Mario enemies among the monsters on the island, including Cheep Cheeps, Bloopers, Goombas, Pokies, Boos, Lava Bubbles, Piranha Plants, Booblaws, Spinies, Thwomps, and Shy Guys. 3 Chain Chomps are also kept as pets by citizens of Mabe Village. A Yoshi doll and a picture of Princess Peach are both part of the trading quest. After getting the Yoshi doll, you can also collect a number of statues of the previously mentioned Mario enemies, which have stands meant for them around Mabe. It is worth noting that Chain Chomps, Bob-Ombs, and Piranha Plants appear in multiple other Zelda games, and Chain Chomps specifically were actually designed as Zelda enemies first. But since this game treats them as Mario enemies, I'll be doing the same. The cameos aren't just linked to Mario, however. One of the characters involved in the trading quest, named Mr. Wright, is a reference to Dr. Wright from the SNES and N64 versions of SimCity, versions of the game produced by Nintendo which themselves have much Nintendo content. Another quest character is Richard, one of the protagonists of the Japanese-only RPG for the frog the bell tolls. There's also an enemy referred to simply as Kirby, which I don't think I need to explain that one. I want to bring attention to all of these cameos now, but we'll discuss them more later in the video. Over the course of the game, Link grows attached to Marin. Marin grew up on Koholint, being told by her father that nothing lay beyond the sea, and that Koholint was all there was. She felt in her heart, however, that he was wrong. A suspicion confirmed when Link washed ashore. Marin sees him as a symbol of her greatest desires in life, to travel the world and sing to everyone she could find. In a particularly poignant conversation on the beach, she explains to Link that she often wishes to be a seagull, and have that freedom to travel as she wanted. She also wants to awaken the Windfish herself, so she can wish to leave the island. Link, for his part, also seemed interested in Marin in his own silent way, enforced by the text of the game. Returning to Link's search for the instruments, he is led to enter the 8 dungeons on the island. Within each of these dungeons, Link meets the Nightmares, 8 boss creatures who seem to be corrupting the island. As Link defeats them, some of the Nightmares begin to warn Link that awakening the Windfish may not be everything he believed it was.
Tisk, tisk. You don't seem to know what kind of island this is. What a fool.
Partway through the adventure, Link enters an ancient ruin, where a mural tells him the truth. Koholint Island, and everything on it, save those who came from outside the island, were created from the Windfish's dreams. And if the Windfish were to awaken, it would all fade away, just as dreams do. If Link were to awaken the Windfish and escape the island, he would be sentencing all the kind people he had met, not just to death, but complete annihilation. The Nightmares aren't just fighting to stop Link out of malice, but because he is a threat to their very existence.
My energy! God! I lost. But you will be lost too, if the Windfish wakes. Same as me. You are in his dream.
But Link isn't the only danger to the island, as Marin is still intent on singing her song to awaken the creature. While she is unsuccessful due to not having the instruments, the monsters kidnap her anyways, abandoning the poor girl at the top of the mountains. After saving her and completing the final dungeon, it was Link's turn to try the same thing. Playing the 7 instruments and using Marin's melody, the Ballad of the Windfish, he was able to open a hole in the egg and enter it in search of the Great Dreamer. Within the egg, Link is finally faced with the Shadow Nightmare, the architect behind the Windfish's never-ending dream. Nightmare explains that it had found the Windfish's dream and conquered it, hoping to rule over this dream world for all time. But Link, of course, can't have that, and challenges this final nightmare to a battle. And what a battle it is. The Shadow Nightmare takes on forms of Link's own psyche, starting out with a giant Zol, upping the ante after that by taking the form of the former priest of the Dark Order worshipping Ganon, Aghanim, and then Moldor, a boss from both Link's Awakening and A Link to the Past. When that wouldn't work, the Nightmare drove into Link's deepest fears, and produced a shape even more terrifying. A nightmare form of Ganon himself, fighting just as he did when Link defeated him. The Nightmare briefly returns to its natural state, something that seems a little similar to a Landmola, before finally taking on its ultimate form. It seems almost like an entity of cosmic horror, a pulsating mass with 2 long limbs and a single eye, and heavily resembles a symbol we saw in the last game, representing the demon cult that worshipped Ganon. This is the first of many figures in the Zelda series we will see to take or incorporate a similar shape, a demonic piercing eye, usually orange and glowing. This eye is subtle, but ultimately hugely important in the Zelda series going forward, and we'll discuss it in more detail as we approach future titles. It's worth noting that, in the Switch version, Nintendo actually reused certain sounds in this fight from Phantasma in Mario & Luigi Dream Team, drawing comparisons to another living nightmare entity, as well as yet another connection to another Nintendo franchise. With the Shadow Nightmare finally defeated, Link is able to ascend to the chamber in which the Windfish has been kept. he speaks for one last time to the owl, a representation of the Windfish's spirit within the dream realm, before the reality shatters, and Link finds himself back on the raft. Koholint Island now is nothing more than a memory, having disintegrated into pure life force. A seagull flies overhead, sailing off towards distant lands. Maybe, just maybe, in the last moments of his dream, the Windfish had granted Mirren her wish. Maybe someone from the island was able to finally be truly free and happy. And we fade out on Link's Awakening. Koholint Island is one of the stranger worlds in the Zelda series. It's kind of a dream, but still exists in physical reality. But despite being a place that does actually physically exist in the material plane, the island takes on many aspects of the dream world. It is most comparable to the idea of Azathoth in Lovecraftian mythology, of a world that exists due to the dreams of some extraplanar entity, doomed to end whenever the slumberer awakens. Much like a dream, it's heavily based on the world surrounding it, including taking influences from Link's own lived experiences. I mentioned earlier how the forms of the final boss are based in large part on the boss battles from A Link to the Past, but if you dig in deeper, more parallels start to unfold. For one, the map is very reminiscent of that of Link's Awakening. Pleasant Village to the west, just south of a strange maze-like forest. An imposing mountain range to the north. Home to versions of both Turtle Rock and Spectacle Rock, both landmarks from Hyrule's Death Mountain region, as well as an imposing tower similar to the Tower of Hera. A dry desert in the south. A dungeon in the center of a lake to the southeast. A heavily fortified castle you sneak into underground towards the center. Clear comparisons can be drawn between the Eastern Palace and the similarly placed ancient ruins. Even Mirren is stated and shown in official art to look almost identical to Princess Zelda as she appears in A Link to the Past, except a redhead. I guess that's Link's preference. But Link's influence on the world goes deeper than even that. When he arrived on the island, so did the monsters. Monsters similar to those he'd fought in Hyrule during A Link to the Past. Think back as to why Link went traveling in the first place. The monsters weren't just the nightmare's defense system. The monsters weren't just the dream's defense system. They were manifestations of Link's fear of Ganon and the loyal servants who sought his return. This too is why the final nightmare, which emerges directly from Link's body, took on the forms of Aghanim, Ganon, and what we're going to refer to as the Malice Eye. The nightmares that we fought weren't the nightmares of the Windfish, but instead of Link himself, physical manifestations of his fear and doubt brought to life by a godlike entity, infecting the peaceful dreamscape of the island. This was also why Link was the one destined to wake the Windfish. He had to eliminate his own fears before the dream could end. This isn't just a theory. This is stated by one of the owl statues in-game, though only in the Japanese, and mistranslated to refer to Link's death in the English. That owl statue also seems to imply that if Link fails to awaken the Windfish, Koholint will shift to being primarily based on Link's dream rather than the Windfish's.
If the Windfish does not awaken, the hero will become the soil of the island.
It seems that the state of this dream is affected by those conscious minds within it. But it seems like there are even more interesting inspirations for the island, if the Easter eggs we discussed earlier are anything to go by. There's also one more cameo character I didn't mention earlier. This frog, Manu, is the villain from yet another game said to take place in a dream world. Super Mario USA, aka the American Super Mario Bros. 2, which once again I have a video on. Mamu is Wart's name in Japanese. They simply didn't change it to match his English name. The translators at NOA just didn't understand what was going on, I guess. I'm only going to gloss over this theory for the moment, much like I did in my Kirby Superstar Ultra video, but the more I look at this series, the less I feel like these are coincidences. Massive crossovers like Link's Awakening and the Great Cave Offensive seem consistently placed in worlds related to dreams, like Koholint Island and Dreamland. Not only that, but we have actual character crossover that makes canon sense in the form of Wart. These form the basis for a Nintendo multiverse, and are far from the only things outside Smash Bros. To establish such. I'll point out more as we come across them later in the series. This game is relatively simple to place in the timeline, as many things in this game and the original make it clear that this Link is the one from A Link to the Past. This game, then, comes after that, but still before the NES titles, as those took place centuries later. if you want to play it, the version we discussed today is available for Nintendo Switch, and the Game Boy Color version is available for Switch Online. Thanks for watching. I hope you find this reinterpretation of the game interesting, and I look forward to hearing what all you have to say about it in the comments and my Discord server. Thanks for watching, and I'll see all of you next time.